You want to know why I'm a cannabis advocate? I'll tell you. Once upon a time, my son was having over 300 to 425 to 440 something seizures a day. After we had exhausted all options that were legal in our state and nothing had worked, we ended up having a surgery to implant a VNS device, which is called a vagal neural stimulator. This is a pacemaker device that is about that big. It is inserted just underneath the skin, right at the base of the clavicle or so, and whenever it's attached, the wire is attached to the base of the vagal nerve. This device, since it pretty much acts like a pacemaker to your brain, it gives you a shock, or gives him a shock, rather, every 20 seconds for a 7-second duration. Now, whenever he has a larger seizure, it also comes with a magnet. You can run this magnet over the top of the VNS to start an instant pulse, which is increased in duration and, connectivity. It has a higher pulse rate and it lasts for a longer time. So he gets shocked for a 30-second duration whenever you run the magnet. The magnet also stops the VNS if you hold it. This was our last hope for treatment. And after years of over-medication, Trace maxing everything out, this was all we were left with. After we had gotten the surgery and he maxed that out after about 6 to 7 months, we were told there's nothing more that they could do for our son by his epilepsy specialist in St. Louis Children's. That's the day everything changed for me. That's the day that I knew it was up to me and that I couldn't depend on other people to fight for my son's life. This was my fight, and that's all I've done. This is what we do. Anyway, I had been researching prior to this for about a year, 7 months at least. I was researching about cannabis and epilepsy. I had one of my friends casually bring it up in conversation, and I, like a lot of people, dismissed it. I had nothing against cannabis. I myself smoked. I grew up around it. It wasn't as controversial to me as what it would be to most people. But still, when it was mentioned, I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm not going to give my kid weed, right? Yeah. Well, for one, it's illegal. Yeah, illegal. Then, I didn't really know why. I just thought, hey, they wouldn't tell us these things in school and on TV or anything for that matter if it wasn't true, right? Well, yeah, it's as bad as the internet. Can't believe shit they tell you. So, long story short, I researched. I educated myself on cannabis, and not only was I severely shocked, but I became increasingly disappointed in my government and how they were incapable of telling the truth. The more in-depth that my research got, the more I started to learn about other things, and I really wish I didn't know these things now. But cannabis is medicine, cannabis is non-toxic, and now I am no longer just a medical cannabis advocate. I'm a straight-up cannabis advocate. I think it should be legalized. I think that we should be able to grow it, just as regularly as anyone grows tomatoes or flowers for that matter. It's one of the least toxic plants known to man. This is the most beneficial plant that I know of. And, I just keep learning more, I'm still new to this. So, after I educated myself on cannabis, I noticed Trace was starting to go into renal failure that spring after finding out there was nothing more that they could do for him medically. And after voicing my concerns to the doctors year after year about the increasing cocktails of pharmaceuticals he was getting and how dangerous they were and, levels and all of this stuff, they just kind of dismissed it and I guess thought I was just some over-concerned mom. I don't know. I wasn't. I was a mom who noticed what was going on with her kid and they just thought I was stupid. Trace was going into renal failure. He was not urinating or evacuating his bowels like one should. His circulation was declining. There are several things that I noticed and that I complained about for months. Well, I was in my prerequisites for my BSN in nursing because I thought, hey, this is what I'm meant to do. Little did I know. But that's another story. When I was reading up on renal failure and different kidney and bodily functions, a lot of the stuff that I had already known was disturbing enough. And then to see that my son was indeed in the stages of renal failure and they would have let him die and kept him on pharmaceuticals just disturbs me to this day. So without their permission, I decided to take Trace off of his pharmaceuticals. It took me over 10.5 months, but we safely did it. It was tedious and scary. I was a nervous wreck the entire time, but as soon as I started to decrease his felbamate, his urination began to become a little bit more regular. The color was regulating itself. He began to be a little bit more alert, as the months went by and his pharmas were decreasing. I noticed cognitively he was waking up from whatever brain fog that these medicines had him on, and it was just like, here's my kid. After all of these years, there's my baby. So, beyond the benefits of just decreasing the pharmaceuticals, his seizures stayed the same. I had to be really careful whenever I was taking him down off of each med because he was on multiple medications. This was something I was used to as we had been doing this for 10 years. So I paid attention and I educated myself. I was not naive when it came to his medications. I was just naive at the dangers they posed because of how accepted they were. Little did I know that those medications were killing my kid. So, whenever he was off of all medications, he was in better shape, physically, mentally, but his seizures were still at a baseline of between 350 to 420 something, 440 something on a bad day. So we were still stuck with that. But at least we had a baseline, and we knew that, Trace was doing better without the pharmaceuticals, so we decided to wait a couple months and try the cannabis oil. And the first day, I went from having my baby die in my arms twice. You have no idea what it's like to hold your son as he seizes and stops breathing. And he leaps almost out of your arms as his heart stops, and then he's lifeless for 2 minutes. As you watch the color fade from his body, you know that you would do anything to keep him alive. And like any parent should, like I think any parent would, that's what we're doing, just trying to keep our son alive. The first day, he had under 65 seizures. It's been almost 2 years. It's been over a year and a half, and he's holding at over a 90% reduction in seizures. He doesn't have over 40 seizures a day, and he rarely has grand mal seizures or highly convulsive seizures, to where I was having to resuscitate him multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. I've only had to give him rescue breaths twice since we started cannabis oil. He can't overdose on it because it's non-toxic. He's not going to, lose his motor functions or die or have a stroke because of his medicine. I don't have to worry about all of the crap that I used to have to worry about with all of his pharmaceuticals. And not only that, cognitively, he's improving. Physically, he's improving. I bet he's doubled in size. He is like 65 pounds to where he stayed under 40 pounds. I mean, he was 10 years old. He was like 40 pounds. That's not great. So, yeah. The more you do your research, the more you start to see a pattern on how there's nothing but benefits from this plant. And misinformation and bias and stereotypes have fueled so many ignorance. Just so much ignorance around this. Like, I don't even understand why we believed that. Like, how could we as a country been that stupid? I don't understand it. Like, it took me a really long time before I actually wrapped my head around prohibition. And if you've ever heard of cognitive dissonance, that's what it did to me. Anyway, I will forever be changed by this journey in my life. And, whenever it comes to cannabis, it's safer than the Tylenol you keep on your top shelf. You give your infants Tylenol. You take Tylenol when you're pregnant. You give your kids Tylenol. Everybody takes Tylenol. Do you know how many people overdose, die off of over-the-counter medicines like Tylenol that we use commonly every day, that we assume are safe? They're not. They're not safe. And cannabis is. And it's condemned because people demonize it. They demonize it because they directly stand to profit from prohibition. Period. That's it. That's why people die. That's why people go without, needed treatment. That's why people suffer every day. That's why people can't afford medication. And people do without. And people like my son have to suffer through medicine after medicine after medicine that harms their bodies, when there's a solution that they don't want you to know about, that they've known about. Do you know how many times that I've talked till I was blue in the face to a politician trying to explain why they should legalize cannabis for my son so that he won't die, for other people like him, so that they can save lives? Not to mention it's sustainable and good for a billion other things. It's just something I think you should think about. It's something I think that you should look into. And something that you should realize I don't take lightly. If your life depended on it, or the life of your loved one, I think you'd do a little research too. And who knows? You may just change your mind.